Dad. What's happening? What's going on?
Look.
It's mine!
Resonance of Fate. Oh boy, this is a bit of a weird one, because I bought this game pretty much back at launch, and I have quite fond memories of playing through this game. And then once I started recording footage for this game, I realized I hadn't finished it. And full disclosure, I still haven't finished it. And this is one of the few games I'm reviewing that I haven't finished, but there's a reason why. The story follows a mercenary trio on their quest to do various jobs, and well, that's basically the story you're given until several hours in. Then it becomes a quest to prove whether or not fate is a thing, and then it sort of devolves down to proving God, or killing God, or becoming God. It's a JRPG, so eventually it's going to devolve down to one of those three things, and again, I didn't get that far, I'm sorry, but because this game very much willed me to not do that. But let's look at our characters, because maybe they'll save the day. Now, the mercenary trio you have stars Vacheron, the single actual professional mercenary of the group, which is mildly alarming. His other characterness is he's the obligatory character played by Nolan North. Good to see he's getting work anyway. Next you have Zephyr, who is pretty much just passive-aggressive angst. I mean, if nothing else, I like his voice actor, Scott Menville, but other than that one thing, and his weird passive-aggressive relationship with Vacheron, despite the fact they're stuck together, creating a weird, almost sort of odd couple scenario, there's not a lot to this guy. And then finally you have Leanne, who is girl. That's really her character. That she's the team girl. And, I mean, on the other hand, 30% female main characters is still higher than most games, but once again, there's just not a ton of character here until, again, you get later on. The extent of these characters is they are three mercenaries who barely stand each other, and they just do jobs because it's what they do. I mean, if nothing else, Resonance of Fate is a very good top-heavy mercenary simulation, I guess. But as a storytelling game, it's not very good. Because by the time the actual story kicks in, you are either invested because you really, really like these characters for some reason, or alternatively, you are absolutely hooked on the combat system, but you are not in it for the story because there's so very little given to you. But the combat, that's a thing that hooks people, so let's talk about that. First of all, this is a very stylish game. It is a game about high-speed, flipping around gun kata, and that's not a bad thing because, well, again, it's very stylish, it's very engaging, it's very cool. But to get to this point, you have to go through, what is this? Yeah, the tutorial in this game is not great. It was about 25 minutes of reading pages and going through the most mundane actions just to go through a standard tutorial, which was overly convoluted for no reason. And I know what you're saying, it's a tutorial, it's meant to teach you stuff, right? Well, yes and no. First of all, the very basic stuff, like actually just attacking your enemy, well, you have to go through that tutorial to unlock all the rest, and you have to do it sequentially. So if you were, say, trying to figure out how to do an entire team attack, well, you have to go through all the basic stuff you might already know and or not care about to do it, because case in point, the one thing I wanted to learn was how to do a team attack. And just to explain how convoluted this game is, again, I've owned this since its launch. I went specifically through the tutorial just so I could show off team attacks in the footage. I still have no clue how to actually do a team attack, despite following the exact instructions provided. But you have your standard attacks, which is just standing around waiting for your gun to charge and shoot your opponent, in which time you've probably been shot by your opponent, and therefore forced to surrender your turn. And yes, it does sound like you'll never be using that, because you'll never be using that. Then you have hero actions, which sacrificed one of those little red jewels in the bottom of the screen to allow you to plot a path across the battlefield, and while your character's running that path, you can shoot your opponents as many times as you're capable of. And this is great because not only is it fun and stylish, you can hit the enemy stupid amounts of times, you can unlock bonus damage by ricocheting them off the ground, you can do bonus damage by juggling them, Basically, this game is entirely focused on these abilities because it's the most notable thing this game has to offer, and it's great. It's absolutely exhilarating and satisfying to fight this way, but I know what you're going to say, why don't you just do that every turn? Those little pips you're spending to do this, those are actually also your health bar. Yeah, I know you see a character health bar for your characters, but the thing is, once those health bars expend, it destroys one of those little pips. And once you run out of all of them, the characters get panicked and, well, bad things happen, really. So be wise in how you spend them, but absolutely you're just going to use those hero points whenever possible because hero attacks are awesome and really the reason to buy this game. Now it's also notable that there are 3 types of attacks in this game: a standard handgun attack, a submachine gun attack, and grenades. And each one of these has an individual experience level, and that makes things way more convoluted than it ever needs to be, a reoccurring theme with this game. But the deal is, handguns deal standard damage, but they don't do too much. Submachine guns deal a ton of damage, but that damage doesn't actually exist unless they've been shot by a handgun, so you sort of have to combo them. And then grenades do a lot of damage and are explosive, but those are of limited supply because those are actual items you have to carry. And if you carry grenades or a health pack, that takes up one of your 2 weapon slots. Now I know what you're thinking, I've got 3 characters, I'll assign 1 to handgun, 1 to submachine gun, and 1 to items/explosives, that way I've got a standard damage dealer, a scratch damage dealer, as well as a sort of white mage healer character. And you know that's not a bad idea, because that's exactly what I thought my first playthrough. That actually doesn't work, because a few chapters in, arbitrarily, they'll start removing your characters, and then suddenly you have to rely on 2 characters to fill out all 3 roles. And this in turn means that in order to properly level your characters so your team stands a chance against its enemies, you have to basically manage each of the 3 weapon types with each character. And I know what you're thinking, this just means you can focus on what your character's weak on and level them quicker, or in a much more sensible way of saying it, it takes 3 times longer to level up any character because you have to fill out 3 separate experience bars, of which 2 of them are probably not going to get utilized very much. Yeah. Like I said, there's just way too much faff in this game, and it feels like, once again, it's being complex for complexity's sake, and not because it makes a good, sensible game. But there is something kinda sorta mildly simple about this game. Map navigation. Oh sure, when you're on a map, you have to put little hexagon pieces down so you can actually walk on it, but beyond that you're just a standard little marker on a map scrolling around, which felt weirdly out of place given that it seems like they worked really hard on these character models. But that's gameplay not even remotely in a nutshell, and I'm sure I left a whole lot out that I'm absolutely certain I'm forgetting. But again, the gameplay, it's engaging and it's cool when you finally get to that point, but the thing is, there's so much working against you from trying to figure out how the game actually works to get to that point. And then, once again, trying to figure out your perfect setup when you're missing one character for no reason other than some plot-contrived reason. It's frustrating because I really like the concept that this gameplay goes in, but it just feels like it wasn't executed remotely well. Now, the overall presentation to Resonance of Fate is kinda sorta not particularly good. I know what you're saying. The gameplay is awesome, there's flipping around, there's shooting things. It looks like an awesome action movie. What are you talking about? Well, for one thing, let's just stop and look at this game without any sort of actual movement. Because once you get rid of the high-speed, hyperactive camera in all the fancy hero mode moments, well, suddenly you notice that this game is very gray and very dull looking. The characters and enemy designs aren't particularly interesting, and that the overall world design, while kind of magical and sci-fi, steampunk, whatever you want to call it, it's just not that interesting. It's very, very dull and bland, and maybe it's just me, but the character faces are very, very much stuck in the uncanny valley and are just kind of disconcerting to look at for too long. Although I will give credit to this game, it does have one amazing thing. While you advance through the game, you can get different outfits and stuff and completely customize your character's appearance, from their hair color to their shirt color, eye color. That was incredibly deep and awesome. And for audio design, well, the soundtrack was composed by Motoi Sakuraba, and honestly, I'd say it's a rare miss for him. And we're talking about the guy who composed the songs to the Tales of games and the legendary Ernest Evans here. The music here is not very good. Honestly, the only songs that stick out to me are the incredible amounts of Casio keyboard when you get into a panicked state, and one of the opening video's theme songs. Other than that, the rest of the soundtrack was pretty much entirely not noteworthy. The voice acting is well done, and as stated earlier, there are a couple well-known voice actors in here, and they do bring their professional quality to the table. Now, if you want a copy of Resonance of Fate, it's not a super common game by any means, but it's also not really in high demand all that much. A quick look on eBay says you can get them for about $15, and at that price the game's not bad. If you're looking for an interesting, stylish game that tries to do some rather innovative things with its combat system, this game is that, but at the same time there is just a lot of front-ended nonsense you have to go through before you can actually find a game here that's really truly enjoyable and satisfying to play. And that's a damn shame, because there is so much in here that is kind of innovative. And the most frustrating thing about this game is I can't say it's style over substance, because there is substance here along with its style. It's style with substance, but no competent execution, and that's the frustrating thing. Because at the end of the day, you have to dig through a giant mountain of faff before you find the enjoyable, stylish, really fun and engaging game that this game had the potential to be, and to a certain degree still is. So, if you have a lot of time, you have a lot of patience, and you're really, really interested in this game, well, for $15 I'd say pick it up, but if you're kinda sorta on the fence, I'd wait to see if you could find it a little cheaper, or I'd skip it entirely, because honestly, this game is an incredibly slow burn, and if you don't have the patience for it, it's just not going to be worth your time.